What happens when the people in power start protecting each other instead of protecting the law? Today, Democratic Senator Patty Murray called it out. Straight, no sugarcoating. She told Pam Bondi exactly what millions of Americans already feel, that under Trump and his loyalists, law and order has been replaced by chaos, corruption, and cronyism.
Can you confirm you will not allow any conduct like what is alleged to continue at the DOJ?
I'm not going to talk about anything that's alleged. What I will talk about with you, hold on, you asked me a question and I get to answer it. What you asked me, alleged conduct that's part of a pending whistleblower lawsuit that was filed on the eve prior to Emil Bove's hearing today.
I'm not asking about that
suspicious.
Case
hold on, let me keep going.
Attorney
I would
General
run
Bondi,
through a wall
this
for
is my
Emil
time,
Bove
Mr. Chairman,
and Todd
I would
Blanche.
like to continue with my questions. I have very limited time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, we are in a deeply alarming moment where law and order is being replaced by chaos and corruption and really whatever Trump wants. And your department's independence and its capacity to do its job have eroded before our eyes. We have seen respected career officials who've been fired for doing their job. Thousands more are being pushed out with your buyouts and the threat of mass firings, and entire divisions are being eliminated, and grants have been canceled illegally. So I have questions about how and why those decisions are being made, and importantly, whether you're adequately resourcing DOJ to do its job. But before I turn to my questions, I do want to raise my alarm about the troubling pattern of trampling basic rights. Detainees, including U.S. citizens, being shipped overseas without any due process. Elected officials are detained for conducting oversight, and a U.S. senator gets tackled to the ground for asking questions at a press conference. This is not the country I know or the values I believe in, and I hope that colleagues on both sides of the aisle will agree with that. Now, to the questions. Yesterday, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this issue, a former DOJ attorney filed a protected whistleblower complaint accusing Deputy AG Emil Bove and senior DOJ leadership of defying court orders, including through, quote, lack of candor, deliberate delay, and disinformation, unquote. The complaint also accuses this administration of firing the whistleblower for, quote, telling the truth to the court. These allegations are deeply concerning. Now, I know you said that you can't discuss the case, but can you confirm that you agree that this administration should follow court orders?
We will follow court orders, Senator. The entire administration will follow court orders. The problem arises in the district courts. All these district courts throughout the country are tying our hands. But here's how we will follow them when we get to the United Supreme Court.
I need to ask
we're winning.
A number of questions.
And so, yes, we're following the orders of the court.
Let me ask my questions. Can you confirm you will not allow any conduct like what is alleged to continue at the DOJ?
I'm not going to talk about anything that's alleged. What I will talk about with you, hold on, you asked me a question and I get to answer it. What you asked me, alleged conduct that's part of a pending whistleblower lawsuit that was filed on the eve prior to Emil Bove's hearing today.
I'm not asking about that
suspicious.
Case
hold on, let me keep going.
Attorney
I would
General
run through a
Bondi,
wall for
my
Emil
time,
Bove and Todd Blanche.
Like to continue with my questions. I have very limited time. Thank you. I just want you to confirm for this you will not allow conduct like that at the DOJ. Yes or no?
I will always support and defend Emil Bove, and I will defend Todd Blanche. They are two of the finest people I know, and two of the ethical people I know.
I was asking about the conduct. Let me keep going here. Now, in April, DOJ abruptly terminated over 300 public safety grants that had already gone through a very rigorous and fair and apolitical application process with no explanation. This is funding to investigate and prosecute drug trafficking, to support foster care kids who experienced abuse or neglect, to expand access to forensic exams to prosecute violent crimes like sexual assault. These really senseless cancellations have already forced public safety organizations to cut employees and services. So I want to ask you, when you cut off the community-based violence intervention and prevention initiative funding, were you aware it is used to prevent and reduce violent crime?
Yeah, Senator, you weren't here for that, so I'm going to have to repeat myself. We have cut grants. I think we've cut 6%. But if we have cut a grant that you feel should not be cut, please reach out to me. I will personally look at it. We've turned multiple grants back on. Okay. We have an appeal process. But if you want to come to me directly, I would be happy to sit down with you and look at that and help you.
I'm happy. I appreciate
Again, we're doing everything we can.
Okay, but let me just ask you, when you cut off the expanding access to sexual assault forensic examination grant, were you aware that that grant helps our authorities prosecute rape and sexual assault?
I have no idea about that specific grant you're talking about. That's why I said if you want to come sit down with me, I would never cut a grant
I appreciate that.
intentionally
It's
that
very
has
hard for
anything to
those
do.
recipients on the other end across the country.
Can you
to
give me
get a
the
phone
details of
interview.
that grant?
I can absolutely do that, and my staff will get that to you, but those are two critical ones that I just wanted to ask you about today.
Again, we've turned many grants back on and will continue to. If you want to call me and we can discuss them with you.
Okay, in your budget request, you propose consolidating the Office on Violence Against Women into the Office of Justice Programs. In 2002, Congress actually codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office to implement the Violence Against Women Act. We did that to make sure that violent crimes against women receive the necessary attention, expertise, and resources, and to give the office a strong, independent voice within the Justice Department and federal government. Now, your department wants to fade that into the OJP, which violates the intent of the law that we passed. It makes grant programs less effective, and it places a lot more barriers for victims and services they need. And I see that you're cutting the office's resources by about a third. So will you commit to us, the Appropriations Committee, to follow the law and maintain OVW as a separate grant entity?
I will follow the law, but I will not keep that as a separate grant entity. You and I can disagree all day long on what the law is.
Well,
that's being consolidated into the Office of Justice Programs.
so
I'm not going to cut, let me answer, I'm not going to cut anything that's going to hurt violence against
Not
women.
my question.
It will
I'm
eliminate
asking, just for your information, Attorney General, in 2002, we codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office. So that you need to go back and take a look at that. I know my time is out, but I thank you very much for the time.
What we just witnessed was not just another heated exchange on Capitol Hill. It was a moment that captured the deep anxieties surrounding the future of American democracy, accountability, and the independence of justice itself. Senator Patty Murray's confrontation with Attorney General Pam Bondi wasn't about partisan politics. It was about whether the United States Department of Justice still belongs to the people or if it has become a tool of political convenience. Murray's opening statement sets the tone immediately. She describes a system where law and order are being replaced by chaos and corruption, where decisions appear to be dictated not by justice, but by loyalty to one man, Donald Trump. This isn't rhetoric. What she's referring to is the steady erosion of institutional independence, career officials being fired for upholding the law, whistleblowers punished for speaking truth, and entire divisions within the Department of Justice being dismantled with no explanation. Her frustration is palpable, and rightly so. The Attorney General's responses often feel evasive, defensive, or downright dismissive. Bondi repeatedly frames every question in terms of loyalty, not to the law, not to the Constitution, but to certain individuals she would run through a wall for. That language, while passionate, underscores exactly what Murray is warning about, a Justice Department that no longer sees itself as accountable to the law, but to the powerful. When Murray presses Bondi about whistleblower allegations, serious ones accusing DOJ leadership of misleading courts and punishing those who refuse to participate, Bondi refuses to discuss the issue, citing pending litigation. That's fair on procedural grounds, but what's telling is her immediate pivot to defending her deputies personally, instead of reaffirming an institutional principle that no one in the Department of Justice is above ethical duty. Then comes the question of grants, the kind of funding that keeps communities safe, supports victims of violence, and helps small organizations prevent crime. These aren't political tokens, they are lifelines. Yet hundreds of grants were suddenly terminated without explanation. The impact? Prosecutors lose tools to go after drug traffickers, sexual assault survivors lose access to critical forensic exams, and small community programs lose the funding they need to keep neighborhoods safe. When asked about these cuts, Bondi admits she doesn't know the specifics, but insists senators can call her personally to get grants reinstated. That response, while seemingly open, highlights a troubling trend. Why should public safety depend on who has direct access to the Attorney General? Why are programs protecting rape victims or abused children subject to personal discretion rather than stable, transparent policy? The tension reaches its peak when Senator Murray calls out the administration's attempt to fold the Office on Violence Against Women into the Office of Justice Programs, something Congress explicitly prohibited 2 decades ago. Murray isn't just defending bureaucracy here, she's defending the independence and visibility of an office designed to ensure victims of gender-based violence are never sidelined again. Bondi's response, that she will follow the law but not maintain it as a separate entity, essentially dismisses a congressional mandate. It's more than a policy disagreement. It's an assertion that the executive can override the will of Congress if it suits its priorities. This exchange, taken as a whole, lays bare a much larger question. What happens when power becomes concentrated and institutions lose their independence? When accountability gives way to loyalty, democracy begins to wobble, and the justice system becomes an instrument of those in charge rather than a safeguard for the people. Senator Murray's line that law and order is being replaced by chaos and corruption isn't hyperbole, it's a warning. When a nation begins to normalize the firing of whistleblowers, the silencing of oversight, and the dismantling of safeguards meant to protect the vulnerable, the fabric of justice begins to unravel thread by thread. And the most chilling part? None of this happens overnight. It happens quietly, through budget cuts, through silence, through the phrase, "I can't comment on that." If there's one takeaway from this exchange, it's that the health of a democracy depends not just on laws, but on the courage of those enforcing them. Murray's questions demand answers not only for today's headlines, but for the long-term survival of an independent justice system. Because if whatever Trump wants becomes the new definition of justice, then America's legal foundations are no longer built on the Constitution, but on personal loyalty. And history tells us that never ends well.